I'm Dr. Leah Dorman, and I'm the Senior Director of Animal and Food Policy at Ohio Farm Bureau. I'm also on the Board of Directors for the National Institute of Animal Agriculture. Also was previous co-chair of the Antibiotics Council for NIAA, and was on the planning team for last year's antibiotics conference. Some other transparency things I want to share with you. Just so you know a little bit about me, I'm a farm wife and mom. I have 3 children. I'm also a veterinarian. I work for a farm member organization and we lobby. I'm not a registered lobbyist, but I do work for folks who do. I'm a board member, like I said, of NIAA. I am not an antibiotics expert, but I do care about this issue. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Why are you here? Somebody tell me. You can just shout it out. I'd rather be down there with you folks, but it doesn't work for me. Why are you here? Come on, this is not a trick question. Somebody tell me. Knowledge. Okay, so to learn something. Why else? Is that the only reason? To have a conversation. Maybe do some networking? Absolutely, I hope so. And you know, if you read NIAA's mission, our mission is to provide a forum for building consensus and advancing solutions for animal agriculture and to provide some of the things we talked about, continuing education and communication linkages to animal agriculture professionals. And obviously today, we've gone outside our comfort zone a bit. We're going to talk about that. We're going to give you just a little bit of history of how we got here today. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah, okay, good. I'll give you some history. In 2011 was our very first Antibiotic Symposium, and it was antibiotic use in food animals. And guess what? A dialogue for a common purpose. So we were already talking about having a conversation. One of the key points, there were several key points that came out of this conference, and this was held in Chicago. And one of the key points was need for dialogue going forward. We need to have more dialogue. And so we decided in the second conference, which was held last year in my home state, Columbus, Ohio, and we decided to take a little bit of that old idea and give it just a little bit of new flavor and do something a bit different. And we did a One Health approach to antimicrobial use and resistance, which was a dialogue for a common purpose. Again, we were carrying that conversation through. Just so you know, for both of these conferences, you can get on NIAA's website, which is animalagriculture.org, and you can find the white papers. So if you want to know more and in more detail about these conferences, you can go there and read the white papers as well as several others. But in this conversation, in this dialogue, we wanted to, again, get outside our comfort zone. And so we began thinking about who are the folks we want to have a conversation with. And those folks were not only animal health, we wanted to reach out to human health as well as environmental health. Now, partnerships are scary. And if you can't read that, this says, partnership, you give me half the fish and I'll tell my mom to let you live. They're scary. They're scary. And they're scary because you might have to do some compromising. You might have to spend a little bit of time building the relationship in order to build some trust. But they're a little bit scary. It was very scary for agriculture to get here. But I'll tell you, we really had a strong belief that, even though we're very different, we can work together. And that's really what we're here in the next couple days to do, is to work together. I love this. I stole this slide from Dr. Lonnie King. Of course, he is the chair of the veterinary college there at The Ohio State University. And I like this. It's the scale and complexity of animal and human medical problems embedded in a changing environment demand that scientists move beyond the confines of their own disciplines and explore new organizational models for team science. I love that. Team science. What a great idea. And you know what? We need to change the game, folks. Rather than shouting at one another, talking past one another, talking about one another, it's about time we start talking with one another. So turning adversaries into partners, shifting from those intractable issues to new perspectives. That's what a conversation is about, right? Two-way talking, somebody listening, maybe learning something from that other perspective. And what a great opportunity we have here in the next couple days to do that. So how did we wanted to get over this whole animal agriculture needs to keep to themselves. How did we get over it? Well, we set some goals for our symposium in 2012, and here was our goals. We wanted to lead and engage participants in an open conversation and truly have that conversation, and I'll describe how we did that in just a couple minutes. We wanted to build relationships with other sectors and gain better understanding of other perspectives. Again, it's about that conversation. Begin to find common ground and formulate a path forward, because by listening and by talking, a lot of times you can find something that you all can agree on. There's something. And that something we really felt was that focus on continuous improvement concerning antibiotic use and antibiotic resistance, and that commitment to long-term health. And I'm not just talking animal health here. I'm talking about human health or public health, animal health, and environmental health. So those three things. So who was there in 2012 in Columbus? Mainly, as you see, animal health. It wasn't from lack of trying it, by the way, but you'll see about 9% public health. There were a couple environmental health, even though they didn't show up here on this slide. And then there were production agriculture, some pharmaceutical folks, and then 15% were others. So it's important to know who was there, especially if you're reading the white paper, as we had some of these discussions, because it may change that perspective just a little bit. So again, looking at who was there from more of an organizational context, you can see lots of academia there, support industries, governments kind of were the top three type of categories that were there. Now, we tossed this sentence out, and we had clickers, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but the group had clickers, and we tossed this sentence out to see what level of agreement there was. And this was the sentence: the use of antibiotics in food animals leads to increased antimicrobial resistance in humans. And we allowed folks to vote. And you can see where they were. Neutral to disagree with that statement, but there was 19% that agreed. So this is a quiz now. Who wasn't there? When you looked at those charts, who wasn't there? Talk to me. I know it's after lunch and everybody's tired, but who wasn't there? Who was missing? Physicians, absolutely. Absolutely. Physicians were missing. Who else? Who showed 0? Do you remember? Oh, consumers were missing. Yep, they were. Who else? Although we're all consumers technically. But then environmental health. So really that public health, human health was missing. Not a large percentage there, but then also environmental health. So why is that? Do you have any idea? Any guesses why? Why wasn't public health? Why weren't physicians there? And why wasn't environmental health there? Distrust. I think you're right. I think because we have not spent a lot of time in animal agriculture really reaching out across those boundaries to the other medical fields and environmental health fields, we didn't have those relationships. They just weren't there. So we didn't have that relationship. We didn't have that trust. I think you're exactly right. There actually was a second reason, and I found this out after I gave a talk in North Carolina. The second reason that folks weren't there is because as some of the public health folks, especially on the regulatory side and local public health officials, wanted to attend the conference, they were told no by their higher-ups because they found out who was sponsoring the conference. It was agriculture, and they weren't allowed to go. Yeah, that was an eye-opener for me. That was my aha moment, that we needed more public health input in this conference. So I think we've got that here today, Dr. Raymond. Yeah. One Health, again, is the collaborative effort of multiple disciplines working locally, nationally, and globally to attain optimal health of humans, animals, and our environment. So how do we do this? How do we do this in Columbus, Dialogue for a Common Purpose? We had some facilitated table discussions, and at each table there was a variety of different folks. We assigned seats and groups and had them change for each set of questions. And there was a facilitator at each of those tables, and you can see the round tables there. And there was somebody with a computer, and they were typing in the answers. There was a group of folks, you can see them kind of along the back row back here, called the theme team. And what they did was they were looking at that input in real time, and they were distilling that down into just little sound bites, little snippets of information that then they could come out and present what the whole room said in a very, very short amount of time. So they reported back those themes and any gems that came out in the discussion period. And then we would vote. We actually had that on a screen, and folks used their keypad and voted for what they felt was most important. And you'll see the details of that in the white paper. Now, we had several questions here that these different tables answered. And the first thing we did was identify issues regarding antimicrobial use and resistance. And then we went ahead and talked about factors that affect under each of those issues, and then we talked about major actions that needed to happen in order to address those issues. And I don't know if you've seen it yet. There's a little bit of an issue right here. Sorry, it's my twisted veterinary humor. So, the fourth question was, what are you going to do about? What are you going to do about it? And the fourth question, really, we had folks even stand up and say, what are you, and that can be the collective you, your organization, going to do to change the way things are? Or it might be you individually. I can tell you mine was, you know what, when there's a letter or an editorial in the paper, I need to be able to respond to that. And I did. So there was a little bit of a level of accountability in that. People shared what they were going to do and how they were going to change things moving forward. Now, we did ask another series of questions. I am satisfied with what we accomplished at this conference, and they got to vote. And you can see about 70% in that group. Again, this was a very different type of conference because we had a lot of discussion. We had lots of speakers, but we also had a lot of discussion. But they seemed to like it. 70% were pleased with it. This conference design enabled us to be productive. Again, 84% were at that agree or strongly agree level. This was an interesting question, and it was phrased this way intentionally. My attitudes about antimicrobial resistance have changed as a result of this conference. 58% said strongly agree or agree. Now, I didn't tell you which way it changed, and we don't know. But it gave us a little bit of a gauge to say, hey, did we move the needle? Did we affect people? Did we change some opinions? Did we give them new perspectives? And that's really what we wanted to find out in this question. And then we asked, will this conference have a positive impact? And again, 60% said strongly agree or agree. And I'll just close with a couple quotes. And I really like this one. And never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So don't think that actions when you leave here and go back home can't change things, because they can. This is another one of my favorite quotes. Of course, it's from past president of The Ohio State University, Dr. Gordon Gee. And he said, I've had the opportunity to see him speak many times. And he said, in this time of enormous change and challenge, and I think we can all agree that antimicrobial use and resistance it's certainly changing. And it's certainly been a huge challenge and will continue to be a challenge going forward. But with that comes enormous opportunity. And folks, I think we have an enormous opportunity here in the next couple days to really network, to really learn from each other, and hopefully gain some new perspective and insights. And my challenge to you folks today is to open the conversation, to talk to somebody outside your comfort zone. Maybe learn why they think what they think. And I think that will allow us to find some common ground and be able to find a collective path forward. And that's really what these couple days are about.